What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This. This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we begin our talks on the Shadow Magic Sorcerer, or more commonly just known as the Shadow Sorcerer. This is one that embraces the darkness. The darkness is a part of you, and you get to use that to your advantage. But is it enough to be better than the other subclass options? We will have to find that out today. But before we do that, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, make sure to click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded, and share the video with your friends. So while we talked about the Divine Soul Sorcerer a couple of weeks ago, this is the opposite. This is the one that lurks in shadow. You have this darkness element and you embrace all of the dark features, and it can end up being really cool. As you know, darkness can be a very potent mechanic in Dungeons & Dragons, whether that is using it to deal lots of damage while standing in darkness, which is something that the Warlock likes to do, or you can do something with this where you can see in darkness and get advantage on a bunch of things. There's a lot that you can do with darkness, but is it enough to push it over the edge? We'll have to find that out today, so let's do it. Starting off at level 1, we have Eyes of the Dark, and this is going to give us dark vision, if we didn't already get it from whatever race we took, out to a range of 120 feet, which is pretty nice. In addition to that, when we reach 3rd level in this class, we learn the Darkness spell, which doesn't count as one of the spells that we learn when it comes to how many spells we can have ready. In addition to that, if we wanted to cast this without using a spell slot, we can do that at the cost of 2 sorcery points. If we do it in this way, then we can also see in that darkness ourselves. This is a pretty cool feature, right? Most of your subclasses that end up coming with dark vision are going to be off to a really good start because not all races get dark vision. Humans, for example, and there are plenty of others that just don't get it. And you don't really think about how useful it is until you end up in darkness. And now in some campaigns, people will forget that they're in darkness, and that's part of it, right? But if you're playing in a campaign where you're keeping track of when you were in darkness and who does and does not have dark vision, which should be most of them, this is going to come in handy and lets you choose a race that does not have the dark vision trait and make up for that by taking this. So definitely a huge help there. And even if you did, then you get an extended range. So either way, it works out. And being able to cast darkness by using sorcery points is also really, really nice. Being able to see in your own darkness is huge too, because this is going to give you free advantage on something that cannot see in the darkness. One other thing to think about is that this is magical darkness, so dark vision does not work here. You have to have blind sight or some other way to see through magical darkness in order for this to work. So for you to be standing in this, you can be firing out spells like crazy and you've got free advantage because your opponent cannot see you. That's really good. The biggest drawback, of course, is that it is the darkness spell, which means that your allies also cannot see in the darkness. So you've got to be really careful about being up in the fray here. You do not want to be the front liner in this case because you are going to blind all of your allies as well, which can definitely be very detrimental. There's not really a great way, especially here off the bat, to be able to see in magical darkness. So you need to be very, very careful that you do not completely mess up what your allies are doing. But still, with that in mind, I still think this is pretty nice. Is it anything busted? No, but it's a really good start, honestly. I would give this a solid 8 out of 10. Getting the darkness spell is going to be nice, and being able to see in it is also nice, but you have to be super careful because your allies are not going to appreciate it if you are using this all the time and keeping them from doing what they want to do. Also at level 1, we get Strength of the Grave, and this is a nice little defensive feature that most sorcerers would really want. So with this, whenever you would be knocked down to 0 hit points, you can actually make a charisma saving throw, and on a success, you instead drop to 1 hit point instead. We cannot do this if we are going to be knocked out by radiant damage or if it is on a crit. Once the saving throw succeeds, then we cannot use this again until we finish a long rest. Now this This reminds me a little bit of what half orcs can do, right? Of being able to drop to 1 HP instead. Now, the half orc feature definitely is a little bit simpler and doesn't have as many restrictions like being radiant damage, which in most campaigns, that's not going to be a problem. So I'm not worried about that. Crits obviously can happen and knock you down to 0 HP. And if that is the case, then that's rather unfortunate. But otherwise, you're probably gonna be okay, and this feature should work out just fine. It is a DC of 5 plus the amount of damage taken, so the more damage that you take, the worse that it's going to be. But it is a charisma saving throw as well, so you are going to be pretty good at those, at least most of the time, depending on how you started. If you started in a class other than sorcerer, obviously this could be a little bit worse, but still not that bad. I like it as a defensive feature. I think this is also an 8 out of 10. I think it's solid. I think that any time that we can add on extra defensive utility in order to keep the sorcerer alive, it's going to be a positive thing. At 6th level, we get Hound of Ill Omen, and boy, this is an interesting feature. We get a doggy, and we get to use it to really help us out in what we are doing, but let's see what it can do. So with this, again, we can summon a dog as a bonus action for 3 sorcery points, which is pretty cool. It can target one creature that is within 120 feet of us, and it basically is kind of like a dire wolf with some modified stats. Its size is a little bit smaller. It's a monstrosity rather than a beast. It gets some temporary hit points. It can move through creatures and objects, which is really nice. And at the start of its turn, it automatically knows the target's location, which is huge for tracking. So that's really nice as well. The Hound will then appear within 30 feet of the target, and you then get to roll initiative for it, and it starts going to town. On its turn, it will move towards the target, and it will then try to attack if it can. It gets opportunity attacks, but only against the target, of course. And additionally, when the Hound is within 5 feet of that target, the target has disadvantage on saving throws against any spell that you cast. And this is going to last for 5 minutes or until it is reduced to 0 hit points, which is really, really interesting. So here's the thing. We get a dog that wants to just absolutely destroy whoever it is that we sick it on, right? And I think that that's just a really funny image of just out of nowhere, there's this like shadowy dog that is all of a sudden trying to rip something apart. I love that imagery. So really, really fun there. But on top of that, right, it's really actually not that bad. It's a dire wolf, which obviously will not scale the best as you go up. But honestly, the damage this thing is dealing is completely secondary. To me, the biggest thing is the fact that this thing wants to give disadvantage on saving throws against spells that you cast. This means hold person or hold monster. That is the standout to me, is you give it disadvantage with that, and then its attacks are now at advantage and critting. Or maybe your fighter or barbarian wants to get in on the action and do the same thing. That's a really gnarly combination, and it's super, super good. Obviously, there are plenty of other options for that, but yeah, I think hold person is going to be the standout in this case, and I'm going to want to take that every single time in order to make sure the dog is really giving us our money's worth. Overall, I really like the Hound of Ill Omen. I think it's quite nice. I think it's another 8 out of 10. I don't think it's anything crazy. Like I said, it's not dealing that much damage, but it sets you up for success with other spells that you may be casting, and that's enough for me. At 14th level, we get Shadow Walk, and what this does is it gives us access to a bit of teleportation, although it's maybe a little bit limited. So with this, whenever we are in a shadowy area and we want to move to another shadowy area, more specifically dim light or darkness, as a bonus action, we can teleport 120 feet to another unoccupied space that is also dim light or darkness. So yeah, teleportation as a bonus action, which is really good. This is farther than something like Misty Step, which is really important, but again, it is a little more limited in its application. It has to be dark wherever it is that you are coming from and going, which definitely stifles it a little bit. Now, one thing to think about with this, of course, is that you can create your own darkness. So you don't even necessarily have to worry about being in darkness necessarily on your turn, as long as you've got the darkness spell to go up. But again, the darkness spell can fire off as your action, and then your bonus action, because this is not a spell, you can do this on your bonus action. So they can both happen on the same turn. If you're really in a bad spot and need to get out of there, you can darkness up as an action for 2 sorcery points and then bolt 120 feet to somewhere else that is dim or dark. So definitely something to consider on that. Nice synergy. I like that. Ultimately, it's an 8 out of 10. Like I said, you're not going to want to always pay those sorcery points. You're not going to want to always do that. And you're not going to always be in dim light or darkness. So ultimately, there is a little bit of a limiting factor there, but it's really not that bad. And I honestly love any kind of free teleportation like this. Finally, at level 18, we get Umbral Form. And this is our Super Saiyan, but darkness version. Kind of. So yeah, with this, we become a shadowy type of form, which is really cool. It costs 6 sorcery points, which is really expensive, and we use our bonus action in order to end up like this. However, we get resistance to all damage except for force and radiant damage, and we can move through other creatures and objects as if they were difficult terrain. Pretty standard stuff. You take 5 force damage if you end your turn inside of an object, and you remain in this form for 1 minute, and it ends early, of course, if you're incapacitated, die, or dismiss it as a bonus action. This is a really, really good defensive feature. Resistance to all damage except for force and radiant is honestly awesome. I know that every single sorcerer is going to want resistance to damage because your HP really isn't that great, right? You've had a D6 your entire career. It's 18th level. You need some extra help when it comes to those defenses, especially here at the high levels when things are dealing tons and tons of damage to you. This is basically free HP. You're basically doubling your hit points for free. And I really can't deny how amazing that is. Now, it is expensive at 6 sorcery points, which makes this a really tough sell, because if you look at this, you've got 6 points on this, you got 3 points on your dog, and you got 2 points on your darkness. That's 11 sorcery points just to use each of our features once. That's over half of our sorcery points, and we haven't even used meta magic yet. So that's a little tough as far as that goes. So definitely something to think about on that. Because the cost is so high, I've got to give this a 9 instead of a 10, but it's still really, really good, and definitely is a meaningful capstone, far better than some of the other ones we've talked about. So what do we think of the Shadow Magic Sorcerer? This is a really cool option, honestly. I think that this is a really strong bring to most any campaign, honestly, and it gives you a lot of great options. The extra spell with darkness and the ability to cast it with sorcery points is great, and your ability to see in it is even better, right? Usually this is a strategy that's relegated to the Warlock, with being able to see with Devil's Sight, which, you know, we haven't talked about on the channel yet, but we will soon. And normally that's the strat there. But with this, we've got more of a blaster type of thing that also has access to that, which is really good, and I really like that flexibility here. The extra features that we get on top of this are also really, really nice. Being able to go Super Saiyan in darkness is really cool. The ability to teleport around, also absolutely fantastic. All of the features here are nice. Are any of them insane? I don't know. I don't think that any of them are crazy good. I don't think any of them are insane, but this is definitely far better than some others that we've looked at, and I think there might be one after this that is also kind of worse than this. So we'll just have to see what we end up looking at. But for today, I think my final ranking has got to end up on an 8 out of 10. I think it's quite good. I think it's quite good, but I don't think that it's quite got the tools because of your darkness being interfering with other allies. That can be a problem. We are a little limited in our teleportation at level 14, which can be a little bit tough there. So that's definitely a bit of a limiting factor in my opinion. But you know, overall, I really don't think these features are bad by any means. And I think that anybody would have fun playing this subclass. So yeah, what do you think? Did I rank this too low, too high? Let me know down in the comments below. We will of course be building one of these later this week, and I am very much looking forward to doing so. So until next time, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.